Hey everyone, this is Eric. Quick installment today. Always get lots of questions about how to gain distance with drivers and will a new driver matter, will it won't matter? You know, lots of different questions out there. There's lots of great, marketing that makes buying a driver slightly confusing sometimes. I'm gonna show you an example here in a second about a young lady that came in and seeking more distance for her driver, and with the most honest of intentions about purchasing something new, wanted to see whether or not one was going to wind up being more significant as far as carry distance, overall distance, than a driver that she purchased a few years ago. I'm going to switch the camera here in a second, and we're going to go over some numbers. So you won't see my face for a second, but you will see some numbers and hear the audio. Okay, so I'm going to put you on hold for a second. Okay, so going from left to right here, it wasn't actually a G460 driver. It was actually a Big Bertha driver from a few years ago, right around the same genre as the Double Diamond and the Big Bertha, the Diamond drivers. Figured 4 or 5 years ago. All right, versus a GLE driver from Ping. We can see both of them had similar lofts. It was somewhere around 11.5 degrees or so, between 11 and or 10.5 and 12. I can't remember off the top of my head, but we're just focusing on the results right now. Between the shafts and everything else in it, we can see that her current driver was launching higher by a significant amount. Then club head speed was fairly similar. Again, a lot of times people get confused. Every time, this is only a sampling size of about 5 swings with each. So one swing can have a larger influence on that number. The further that number would go out, the more you'd see some normalization as far as an average go. We can see that what's interesting is the GLE driver was actually producing slightly faster ball speeds, but not by a tremendous amount. It was only basically about 1 and almost maybe closer to 2 miles per hour. But what's interesting is with that launch angle and a slightly higher spin rate, we were able to get her a little bit more carry distance overall, and therefore a little bit further total. You can see, of course, that there's not an enormous difference in total, but with that amount of ball speed, that amount of swing speed relative to what they are, there's just not a lot of energy going to wind up being left in the ball. But by the time everything is said and done, going down the smash factor, which is a super important number, the closer these numbers get to be about 1.5, 1.48, 47, you can see, again, that would be closer to perfect. And the higher those numbers are, the more difficult it is to be able to find an improvement for someone. So it's interesting, as even though this particular driver wasn't working as well for this young lady, she was actually hitting it more efficiently. So inefficiently with the other one, she was gaining better yardage. So just again, for the sake of looking at it and, for the sake of is there an advantage of one to the other, I'm going to turn around for a second. You have to sometimes be careful because, it's very easy to buy a driver for the sake of buying a driver. But in some cases, you may have one that's already in your bag that's working really well, but you might need to, either tee it up a little bit differently. You might need to play a little bit of a different ball. There could be 1,000 reasons why somebody is winding up with an older driver that's working better or a newer driver that's working better. But just make sure that when you're interested in purchasing something, that you can validate it with some numbers and have somebody that's legitimate looking at the numbers to be able to interpret them for you in a fashion where you know that it's going to be of some kind of an advantage for you. And they're not just trying to sell you a driver, because unfortunately in this game that can happen often. Even though that GLE driver was a very good deal, for her, it happens to be on a closeout type of a situation. It just really wasn't working as well as her older driver. So, don't always just give up, on something old just because it's old. This industry is constantly putting out equipment, but it's not always really for you. Without really good testing, even if it's on a short-term basis, something like this, it's always best to test your equipment before you purchase, okay? So at any given time, reach out on my Facebook page, or my email, anything along those lines if you have any questions or want to take this conversation further. Love to hear from everybody. Take care. Have a great day.